again, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Rules as Written Character Builds. I am super excited about the build that we're talking about today because this is actually a character that I played in a campaign back in 2019. So I have actually done this one at the table and it's super fun. It's a spell sword build, pure sorcerer. We're not doing any multi-classing this time. And we're going to be going Draconic bloodline. We're combining the Draconic bloodline's elemental affinity ability, which lets them add their charisma modifier to their spell damage. And then we're going to be combining that with green flame blade, so that we're going to be adding our dexterity modifier to our weapon attack that goes along with green flame blade. So then hopefully we'll be stacking two different modifiers on a single weapon attack using that cantrip. So I'm really excited about this build. Our goals are to just stack as much damage as we can off of that green flame blade attack by utilizing the Shadow Blade spell. And then also we're going to try and get a pretty good AC. We're going to be a dex build, so we're going to be a little dodgy in and out. And yeah, I'm really excited. So let's dive into it. I call this build Shadow Flame. So let's get into it. For our race, we're going to be taking Half Elf. They get some of the best racial ability modifiers of any race. You get your +2 to charisma or to anything using Tasha's custom origins, lineages. And then +1 to 2 other stats of your choice. This build is a little bit mad, multiple ability score dependent, so we're going to need a good charisma, a good dex, and of course everybody needs a good con, so we don't want to skimp on that one either. So that's why we love these 3 separate ability score modifiers. This is also going to give us dark vision and fey ancestry, which is nice. We'll avoid some charm, and we'll be completely immune to sleep effects. Now for our half-elf versatility trait, we're going to be taking Elven Weapon Training. This is going to give us proficiency in short swords, long swords, short bows, and long bows. The sorcerers don't really get any decent weapon proficiencies before we get our Shadow Blade, or when we run out of spell slots and we can't use it. We don't want to go around stabbing somebody with a dagger, so this short sword proficiency is going to go a long way for us. For our background, we're going to take Faction Agent. This gives us 2 language proficiencies. So along with Common, and then from Racial, we'll get Elven, plus these 2, that's already 4 languages. We're pretty worldly right out the bat. This will give us 2 skills as well. It's going to give us Insight, and then one of our choice, either from Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma. And you know, if you saw last week, you know, Perception. We always say Perception, so we're going to snag Perception, because we can't get that one from the Sorcerer class. And now into our ability scores. As always, we're going to be using point buy. So our strength, we're going to dump that. It's going to be an 8. We're actually going to have a pretty intense dichotomy or spread. We're going to have a pretty intense spread on our ability scores. So like I said, our strength is going to be an 8. Our dexterity will get as high as we can with the 15. Adding our racial modifier +1, we'll have a 16 in our dexterity. Constitution, same deal. We're going to go 15, bump it up to a 16. Our intelligence will be an 8. Our wisdom will be an 8. And our charisma will be a 15. And we'll be putting our +2 into charisma, so that'll make it a 17. All right, so that's the background, the starting work of our characters. So let's get into what our levels give us. We'll start getting into some features here. Level 1 will be Sorcerer level 1, so our proficiency is a +2. As of right now, we have a +5 to hit with our melee attacks and a +5 to hit with our spell attacks, so we're nice and consistent there. As a sorcerer, we choose proficiency in 2 skills from the sorcerer list. None are really specifically recommended for this build, but I recommend Intimidation and Arcana. Arcana is always good, to get an idea about the magic items that you're interacting with, and then Intimidation. We are wreathed in shadow and launching flame from our hands, so it's probably going to be pretty easy to intimidate people. The sorcerer gives us proficiency in Charisma and Constitution saving throws. I love sorcerer for the con saving throw proficiency. Because that's the saving throw that you use to maintain your concentration on spells. Most other casters are going to have to either take a feat or maybe start off in fighter or something like that to get that con proficiency, but we get it right off the bat, so that's nice. Unfortunately though, our hit dice is the d6, the lowly d6, so with our +3 con mod, we're going to start at 9 hit points, and we always take the static when we level up, so the static on a d6 is 4, so every time we level up, we'll be getting 7 hit points. We also get some weapon proficiencies, but those don't matter because we have our short sword proficiency. Now into the good stuff. At level 1, we get to choose 4 cantrips. We need green flame blade for the build, as I mentioned earlier. And I think we should also take firebolt, so we have some range damage. We're going to be playing into fire spells as we go along, so that one's a good one. Plus it's a D10, so it's one of the best damaging cantrips aside from Eldritch Blast. Besides that, just to keep us on theme, I'd take Create Bonfire and Prestidigitation so we can create and snuff out campfires and spells like that. Just for flavor, it might be fun for some RP moments. So since Green Flame Blade is so central to the build, let's just go over how it works really quick. So it's a cantrip with a casting time of 1 action, and as part of that action, we make a melee attack against a creature within 5 feet of us. On a hit, the attack deals its normal weapon damage, and we may have the green flame leap to a second target within 5 feet of the first target. This is kind of cool because that person doesn't have to be within 5 feet. You can hit somebody that's right in front of you and make the flames leap to somebody behind them or adjacent to them who's maybe 10 feet away from you. So when those flames leap to the second target, that target takes fire damage equal to our spellcasting modifier. For us, that's Charisma. So right now it's 3. Just like other cantrips, the damage increases at level 5, 11, and 17. For this spell, the damage to both the first and the second targets increases by 1d8 fire at each of those levels, 5, 11, and 17. So for now, it's doing no fire damage at all to the first target, and only 3 to the second. We're also going to start off with 2 first level spells, and we have 2 first level spell slots. So if we're going to be into melee all the time, like we were talking about, we're going to need to protect ourselves, so I would take Shield. It's one of my favorite spells in the game. The fact that the AC bonus remains until your next turn means that you get that +5 to your AC for an entire round of combat, so it's a lot of value for a first level spell slot. And then I would also just take Burning Hands for a little bit of AoE fire damage, plus it's like short range and we want to be in the thick of things, so that'll be fun. Another great thing about the Sorcerer is that we do get our subclass at level 1, just like Cleric. A lot of classes you gotta wait till level 3, Wizards get it at level 2, but for us it's 1, and we are taking, like I mentioned earlier, Draconic Bloodline. So with Draconic Bloodline, we get to choose a dragon type, and we get bonuses with the corresponding elemental type. So what matters for this build is that you choose one of the fire dragons. That's red, brass, or gold. I'm just going to take red, just his stereotypical red fire dragons. You can take either of those, any of those 3. When we do take this, we get proficiency in Draconic, which brings our total language count to 5. This wasn't supposed to be like a language build, but we ended up with quite a few, so that's great. We also get expertise in any charisma check when we are interacting with dragons. What's cool about this is that we even get that bonus if we're not proficient in the skill. So right now we are proficient in intimidation, but not deception or persuasion, but we would have expertise in any of those 3 if we were interacting with dragons. So that's kind of fun. But really the bread and butter of this first level is we get the ability called Draconic Resilience, which gives us an extra hit point at every level. So instead of having 9 hit points, we now have 10. Instead of getting 7 on every level up, we're going to get 8. 8 hit points per level is pretty good. We're starting to feel like, like maybe we have a D8 hit points, or D8 hit dice instead of the D6. This also, Draconic Resilience, is also going to give us a base AC when we aren't wearing armor of 13 plus our dexterity modifier. So right now our AC is 16. It's almost like we're wearing chainmail. That's not too bad for level 1. Yeah, so that's us at level 1. We have 10 hit points, we have an armor class of 16, we can attack with Green Flame Blade on our short sword with +5 to hit to deal 1d6 plus 3 piercing damage and another 3 fire damage to another target within 5 feet of our first target. We can cast Shield as a reaction to increase our AC from 16 to 21, and we can use Burning Hands to do some AoE fire damage. So not a bad little first level package, but let's keep going. At level 2, we're going to get another 8 hit points, so our total is up to 18. We gain another first level spell slot, and we get a new feature called Font of Magic. We gain 2 sorcery points, and we can use a bonus action to turn those sorcery points into spell slots. First level spell costs 2 sorcery points, but we can also turn spell slots into sorcery points, which as we get further into the build is what we'll be doing mainly, because we're going to want those sorcery points to fuel what we're going to get later, which is called metamagic. A first level spell slot will give you 1 sorcery point. So the spell slots always give you as many sorcery points as the spell slot is. It's like a 4th level gives you 4, a 5th level gives you 5. But then to turn the points into spell slots, it's always a little bit more expensive. Like it's 2 points for a first level spell slot. It's 7 points for a 5 level spell slot. Stuff like that. We also learn another first level spell. For this one, I recommend Absorb Elements to protect ourselves from elemental damage, including our own if we ever get caught in like an AoE or a fireball or something that we throw out. And also there's kind of a cheeky little fun combo that you can do with absorb elements and green flame blade that I did a few times at the table when we were fighting bosses, and it's always good fun. So let me break it down for you. Since green flame blade lets us choose a second target to deal fire damage to, when we hit our first target, we can target ourselves with that one. So we can hit somebody and then make the green flame leap from them onto us, and we'll take the fire damage, but then we can use our reaction to cast absorb elements, and that gives us resistance to that damage. And in exchange, the second part of the absorb elements spell says that when you take that damage, you can store some of that energy in yourself, and the first melee attack that you hit with on your next turn does an extra d6 of damage of that type that you resisted. So basically the way it works is you make that green flame leap to yourself, you resist it, you store a little bit of it, and then next time you hit that target, you do an extra d6 fire. So it's a cheeky little way to get some extra damage in. You take 3, you resist it, so it goes down. You're only really taking 2, but it's still pretty fun. You can take 2 and then you can add a d6 to theirs. And then if you cast absorb elements with a higher level spell slot, you get an extra d6 for every spell slot above second. So at level 3, we now have 26 hit points total. We get 1 additional first level spell slot, and we now get our second level spell slots. We get 2 of them at this level. And we also learn an additional spell. And now that we have second level spells, it's time to grab Shadow Blade. So Shadow Blade casts with a bonus action, and it gives us a finesse melee weapon that deals 2d6 psychic damage per hit. So we can officially do Shadow and Flame now. We have our namesake. Now remember, there's a rule in 5th edition that is the multiple spell casting per turn rule is what I refer to it as. It's if you use your bonus action to cast a spell, the only other spell that you can cast that turn is a cantrip with a casting time of 1 action. So you can't bonus action Shadow Blade, main action Burning Hands. You have to bonus action Shadow Blade, main action cantrip. Luckily for us, Green Flame Blade's a cantrip, so we can absolutely, on our first turn of combat, bonus action to grab our Shadow Blade, main action to make an attack with it using Green Flame Blade. So that works for us. And now that we do have Shadow Blade, our attacks are dealing 2d8 plus 3 psychic damage, and then 3 fire damage to our second targets. We're doing Shadow and Flame. We also get our primary sorcerer feature at this level, which is called metamagic. This is how we spend our sorcery points for things other than additional spell slots. So we can choose 2 metamagic options from the list in the sorcerer class. So for this build, our most important one that we're going to take is called Quicken Spell, which lets us use 2 sorcery points to change the casting time of any spell that is 1 action into a bonus action. This means that while we have our Shadow Blade active, we can use our action to cast Green Flame Blade, and then we can spend 2 sorcery points to use our bonus action to cast Green Flame Blade. So we're going to be doing 2 attacks. This is level 3. Right now we only have 3 sorcery points, so we can do this once, and then we have to, turn more spell slots into sorcery points to do it additional times. But still, that's almost like an extra attack at level 3, so that's pretty cool. Very resource intensive at this point. We're going to get more sorcery points later on. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, you always have a number of sorcery points equal to your sorcerer level. They come back on a long rest, and you can never have more than that. So right now we have 3. We can, long rest we'll have 3. We spend 2 for Quicken Spell. That's 2 separate attacks. That's pretty respectable damage at level 3. 4d8 plus 6 in 1 round. That's going to be about as good as like a paladin burning some divine smites. That's going to be about as good as a great weapon master doing that sort of damage. If you're a great weapon master, you have to be very human to have it at level 1, and then you'd be taking the -5 to hit. You'd end up with +0 to hit basically, because I doubt you'd have a +4 strength at that point. But anyway, we're doing good damage for level 3. So now that we have Quicken Spell and we can cast our Green Flame Blade as a bonus action, it looks really great to do 2 attacks per turn. But one thing that I think is pretty fun to do is to instead use your main action to dodge, so everybody has disadvantage on attacks against you, and use your bonus action to cast Green Flame Blade using Quicken Spell. So then you're dodging with our 16 armor class, and if they hit you, because they have disadvantage to hit you, you can still cast the shield spell to pump that up to a 21. Disadvantage, 21 armor class, you're not getting hit much, so that makes us a little more defensible. That's a cool combo you can keep in your back pocket. For our second metamagic option, we already have what's central to our build, but I think a good choice is the extended spell, which lets us double the duration of a spell for a single sorcery point. So our Shadow Blade has a duration of 1 minute, which is 10 rounds of combat. So for most encounters, that's going to be enough to get through the entire fight. But if it looks like it's going to be a long fight, you can spend 1 sorcery point and double it to 2 minutes, which is 20 rounds of combat. So that's a lot more time, a lot more value if you feel like it's going to go down. Or if you want to like break the sword out before fighting starts, do a little RP, and then get into combat, having 2 minutes is a lot more consistent than just having 1 minute. Alright, so that brings us to level 4. We now have 34 hit points, we get an extra second level spell slot, and we get another cantrip. You can take pretty much anything you want at this point. I'm not going to go over good options because we have what we need. We have a ranged attack and we have our green flame blade. We get another spell as well. We're going to get a spell pretty much every level until we get into the teens, then you start getting a new spell every other level. So I think at this point you should take Mirror Image. It's not concentration based, so we can use Shadow Blade at the same time as we're using Mirror Image. And Mirror Image makes us much harder to hit. I said that we're going to be in the thick of combat and we want to avoid getting hit as much as possible. So Mirror Image creates some mirror duplicates of you, and whenever somebody makes an attack against you, you can roll a dice. Depending on how many duplicates are left, there's a high chance that the attack will hit your mirror image instead. So it's pretty useful for that. Keep some hits off us, and if we don't take the hit at all, we don't have to roll a concentration check. We might not lose our Shadow Blade. Also at level 4, we do get an ability score improvement. Now we have that 17 in Charisma. A 17 is a +3, and an 18 is a +4. So if we can find a feat that gives us a +1 to our Charisma, we can bring our Charisma up to a +4 modifier. And I do have one in mind, and that is Fey Touched. This is kind of a min-maxer's favorite feat. It's really good, a lot of bang for your buck. It's going to give us 1 casting of Misty Step per long rest for free, absolutely free, and then we also get to choose 1 first level spell of either enchantment or divination schools of magic. I think you should take Gift of Alacrity. It's otherwise only available to Chronergy or Graviturgy wizards, but what it does is it has an 8-hour duration, and it gives us an extra D8 to add to our initiative rolls. So once per day, pretty much at the beginning of the adventuring day, you'll cast that on yourself, and then for the whole day, your initiative is going to be a D8 +3. So that could be anywhere from a +4 to all the way up to like a +11 initiative. And we have to cast our Shadow Blade at the start of every combat. So going first is nice because we can get our spell up, get some damage out, and then for every subsequent turn, we're ready to keep pumping our DPS. It also gives us a +1 to our Charisma, as I mentioned, so now our Charisma is an 18, which means that our spell attack bonus is now a +6, and our spell save DC is now a 14. Alright, so let's keep on rolling. This brings us to level 5, so our proficiency bonus is now a +3. That means that our spell attacks are now a +7 to hit, our melee attacks are a +6 to hit, our concentration checks are also at a +6 to hit, and then our spell save DC is at a 15, which is pretty good. 42 hit points. We get 2 3rd level spell slots. With our 3rd level spell slot, we can now upcast our Shadow Blade. So Shadow Blade is upcastable, but the damage only increases on every other higher level spell slot. So it's a 2nd level spell. You get the damage increase at a 3rd level spell, a 5th level spell, and a 7th level spell. So it's pretty much every 4 levels from here on out, we will be increasing our Shadow Blade damage. It doesn't cast up to 9th level, unfortunately. But yeah, so now it's dealing 3d8 psychic damage per hit. We get a new spell at this level. We have 3rd level spell slots, and we are a fire-based build. So we just kind of have to take Fireball. If we don't take it, the wizards are going to make fun of us. So we're going to take that one, even though with the way that this build is designed, we won't necessarily be using it all that often, but if you see a big group of enemies, throw the Fireball out. You got to do it. We also get a nifty little ability called Magical Guidance. When we fail an ability check, we can spend a sorcery point to re-roll it. It's pretty good for, crucial checks. if somebody's like trying to grapple you, you don't want to get, pinned down in combat, or if you're trying to get out of a tough social situation with a persuasion or an intimidation roll, you can use it. I prefer to save our sorcery points so we keep casting Quicken Spell as much as we can, but it's nice to have in your back pocket. But our favorite thing about 5th level is that our cantrip damage is now upgrading. So our Green Flame Blade is now dealing 1d8 fire damage to our primary target and another d8 fire damage to our secondary target. So since our Shadow Blade also upgraded, that means that at this level we're adding an additional 2d8 damage to our main target and 1d8 damage to our secondary target. And if we're quickening, like we talked about, that's an additional 4d8 damage on our main target and an additional 2d8 on our secondary target, so it's pretty good. The way that it goes is that our Green Flame Blade now deals 4d8 plus 3 damage to our first target and 1d8 plus 4 to our secondary target. A d8 plus 4 is consequently the damage of a longsword with an 18 strength. So if there's somebody in your group with extra attack hitting 1 and 2 targets, we're now getting to hit that second target for the same amount of damage without having to roll to hit because the Green Flame automatically jumps. So we're getting pretty excited about this build so far. This is looking good. But let's keep going to another great level, which is level 6. We get 50 hit points total now. We get an extra 3rd level spell slot. We get another spell. At this point, you can really take anything. We have all that we need for this build, so I won't go into, for the sake of brevity for everybody watching at home, I won't go into, what spell you should take now. Just take whatever you think is best. We have what we need. But we do finally get the subclass feature that I spoke about in the intro, and that's Elemental Affinity. This is a cornerstone of our build. Whenever we deal fire damage, we can add our Charisma modifier to one roll of the spell's damage. This isn't once per turn, this is just once per casting of a spell, so when we're quickening spells, we can do this multiple times per turn. But what's cool is that we can add it to either our primary target or our secondary target, since they're both taking fire damage from the casting of our Green Flame Blade spell. So our Green Flame Blade, our Shadow Green Flame Blade as I'm calling it, is now dealing 4d8 plus 7 to the primary target and 1d8 plus 4 to the secondary target. Or you could do, plus 7, plus 3 to the first target and plus 8 to the secondary target. You can do either one. Most of the time I'm probably going to apply the extra damage to the primary target just because you want to knock people down before you go down the list. You don't want to spread your damage out too much. But yeah, we finally get that ability. So we're stacking 2 different modifiers damage to a single attack, which is pretty fun. When I played this character, I took it to 6th level, so this was as good as it got for me. But let's keep going to level 20 and see how good we can get it in total. So yeah, level 7, we now have 58 hit points. We do have a 4th level spell slot now. Our Shadow Blade upcasts on 3rd, 5th, and 7th, so this won't bring us any extra damage. But you can turn a 4th level spell slot into 4 sorcery points, which is 2 more castings of Quicken Spell. So that's great. Level 8, we get 66 hit points total now. We get 1 extra 4th level spell slot, and we get an ability score improvement. Now that we're stacking both Dex and Charisma damage onto our melee attacks, increasing either one will increase our damage, but Dex also increases our AC and initiative. So we're going to bump Dex up to 18 for the plus 4 modifier. So that now brings our AC to 17, and our melee attacks are adding plus 8 to their damage. 4 from Dex, 4 from Charisma. Now we're on to level 9. We have 74 hit points, and at level 9 our proficiency bonus goes up. It's now a plus 4. So our melee attacks are now at a plus 8 to hit. Our spell attacks are also a plus 8 because we have an 18 in Charisma and Dexterity. We get another 4th level spell slot, and we now unlock our 5th level spell slots. So we can upcast our Shadow Blade. It'll now be dealing 4d8 psychic damage per hit, bringing our total Green Flame Blade damage to 5d8 plus 8 on our primary target and 1d8 plus 4 on our secondary target. Slowly but steadily, we're increasing our pile of dice on every hit. Like I said, it's about every 4 levels we get a Shadow Blade upgrade, and then we get a few cantrip upgrades too, so we get to upgrade it a little sooner sometimes. And remember, most turns we are going to be making this attack twice, as I mentioned with the Quicken spell. So it's looking more like 10d8 plus 16 on one target, and 2d8 plus 8 on a second target, which is pretty fun. Level 10, we are now up to 82 hit points. We have an extra 5th level spell slot, and we get a 3rd choice from our metamagic list. So for this one, you definitely need to take Transmuted Spell. For 1 sorcery point, anytime you cast a spell that deals acid, cold, fire, lightning, poison, or thunder damage, you can spend that 1 sorcery point to change it to anything else from that list. So, if you've taken any other elemental spells, like Lightning Bolt or Thunder Wave, you can turn their damage into fire damage, and you will therefore deal your charisma modifier as additional damage on top of that. So that's pretty cool. A fire lightning bolt, a fire wave instead of a thunder wave, that's pretty cool. And more damage for 1 sorcery point's not bad. Now we also get another cantrip at this level, and since we just grabbed Transmuted Spell, I would grab a cantrip that does one of those elemental damage types. You could grab Poison Spray. It's nice because it's got that big fat D12 damage dice, but personally I would take Booming Blade because it conditionally does more damage to a single target than Green Flame Blade. You hit the target, and then if they move, they take follow-up damage as they're wreathed in booming energy. So you can hit them with that, you can turn it into a fire blade, and then they'll be taking all that fire damage, which would be really nice. But you have to remember that unless otherwise stated, you can only use 1 metamagic option per casting of a spell. So you wouldn't be able to both quicken and transmute a spell. So no bonus action, fire damage, booming blades. That would have to be your main action, and then your bonus action would be a green flame blade. So you could do both of them in 1 turn for the cost of 3 sorcery points, and that's pretty cool. Moving on, we're now at another really good level, which is level 11. We're up to 90 hit points. We get our first 6th level spell slot, which to me, that looks like 6 sorcery points, 3 castings of Quicken Spell. At level 11, our cantrip damage upgrades again, so our Green Flame Blade is doing 2d8 plus 4 to the main target and 2d8 plus 4 to the secondary target. And then, we get to add on our Shadow Blade to make that 68 to the primary target. We get to add our charisma damage to make it 68 plus 8 to the main target. Now we're on to level 12. We have 98 hit points. This is the first level where we won't be getting an extra spell slot. From here until level 20, it's basically 1 extra spell slot for every 2 levels. Just because it slows down as you get higher up there and the spell slots become more powerful. So we also get our 3rd ability score improvement. We're going to use it to increase our dexterity once again. It's now maxed out at 20 for the plus 5 modifier, so our melee attacks are now at a plus 9 to hit and a plus 5 to damage. Our class is an 18, and our initiative rolls are a d8 plus 5. So that's level 12. Now level 13, we get 106 hit points total. We're doing pretty good on hit points for a squishy little d6 hit dice caster because we got the plus 3 modifier and the plus 1 from our Draconic ancestry. Level 13 is actually a pretty big level because our proficiency goes up to plus 5. So our melee attacks are now at a plus 10 to hit, our spell attacks are at a plus 9 to hit, and our concentration checks are at a plus 8. We also unlock our first ever 7th level spell slot, which we can use to upcast our Shadow Blade to its most powerful iteration, because like I said, we can't upcast it to 9th level. So it's now dealing 5d8 psychic damage on a hit. Unfortunately, like I said, it's not going to get any bigger than that, but our Green Flame Blade will get a little bit bigger, so let's keep going. Level 14, we're now at 114 hit points. Once again, no new spell slots at this level, but we do finally get another feature from our Draconic bloodline. We get a feature called Dragon Wings. As a bonus action, we can manifest a pair of wings from our back that gives us a flying speed equal to our current walking speed. They remain until we dismiss them as a bonus action. Now there's no duration on these, so we can keep them around indefinitely and always have a flying speed, which for me, I would just keep them around because that's awesome. And we already use our bonus action to get our Shadow Blade out, so we don't want to have to wait on 2 bonus actions in the middle of the same combat. So that's level 14. Now on to level 15. We're up to 122 hit points. We get an 8th level spell slot, which is more sorcery points for our quickened Green Flame Blades. We are up to level 16. Now we get 130 hit points. We are at another ability score improvement. We're burning through these high level It's pretty quick. Most of our features came from the bottom levels, and these higher levels are just adding more damage, more consistency, more proficiency on everything. So 130 hit points. We get another ability score improvement. Our dexterity is at 20 right now, so it's time to go on back to our charisma, get that up to 20 as well. So now it's on a +5. So now our spell to hits are going to be +10, and we're going to get to add that +5 to our damage on our green flame blade. So our green flame blade is now getting +10 to its damage, which is pretty exciting. We're not a great weapon master, we're not a sharpshooter, but still, we've climbed up and we've achieved that +10 damage, so I'm pretty happy about that. And our little display here, I forgot to add the charisma modifier to the firebolt before, so I'm just throwing that on there now. Anyway, let's keep on rolling. Level 17, we're at 138 hit points. We get another metamagic option. None of them specifically play into our build, but I was thinking that since each of our attacks is rolling a pretty big handful of dice, Empowered Spell would work really well for us. For the low cost of 1 sorcery point, whenever we roll damage for a spell, we can re-roll a number of those dice equal to our charisma modifier. So for us, that's 5. And what's cool about this one is that it specifies in the description that you can use this metamagic in addition to other metamagic options on the same spell. So you could quicken your spell, and if you roll a bunch of 1s, you could spend a sorcery point, re-roll all those 5 of those d8s, and hopefully, get that damage up much higher. Level 17 also brings us to the highest proficiency bonus, +6. So we got +11 to hit with our melee and our spell attacks, and our concentration checks are now to +9. The minimum concentration check that you can do is a 10. So for those minimums, as long as we're taking 20 damage or less, we auto pass those, because even if we roll a 1, 1 + 9 is 10, and you pass that. This level also brings us our first 9th level spell slot, which is a pretty big deal, since these are the most powerful spells in the game. You can take Meteor Swarm for some awesome AoE damage. You could take Power Word Kill to just straight up murder folks, or you could take Wish to just wish for anything you want. But since none of them play into our build, what we're really excited about is the final evolution of our cantrip damage. So our green flame blade now deals 3d8 damage to both of our targets, including the 5d8 from our shadow blade. Cast at 7th level, we're now dealing 8d8 plus 10 damage to our first target, and 3d8 plus 5 damage to our second target. And remember, we can put that charisma modifier on either our first or our second target, so you can make it 8d8 plus 5 and 3d8 plus 10 if you wanted to. So this is the pinnacle of the build's damage output. We're not going to be getting any more dice at this point, so this is as good as we get. 2 attacks per turn, 8d8 plus 10 to one target, 3d8 plus 10 to another target. That's 16d8 plus 20, and 3d8 plus 10. That's really good, and we're also still a 17th level spellcaster, so we have access to all those spells that we've taken. We have a buttload of sorcery points to play with spells any way we want. We do have an 18 armor class right now because of our +5 dex. We can cast Shield to bring that up to a 23, so I'm pretty happy with what we've achieved here. But like I said, let's just keep going all the way to 20. Let's see what else we can get in these next 3 levels. So at level 18, we are getting up to 146 hit points. We do get a 3rd, 5th level spell slot, and we get our final Draconic bloodline feature. This is called Draconic Presence. So as an action, we can expend 5 sorcery points to create a 60-foot aura around ourselves. Creatures who are in that aura are either charmed or feared by us. We choose when we activate the aura. If they fail a wisdom saving throw, and it lasts for a minute. This feature does require concentration, and it costs 5 sorcery points, so we can't use this in tandem with our Shadow Blade, and we're burning more than a quarter of our sorcery points on it, so I don't see us using it very often. But if there's a giant room of very low wisdom enemies and you want to fear them, or if it's, a giant room of low wisdom enemies and you want to charm them, this could be a good one for you. Just keep it in your back pocket. Level 19, we're now to 154 hit points. We get another 6th level spell slot, and we get our final ability score improvement. Now, both of our dex and our charisma are maxed out right now, so we're free to take a few different options here. If you wanted more hit points, you could take tough. If you wanted to keep the Shadow Blade up more efficiently, you could take Warcaster. The most responsible choice would probably be Elemental Adept to get around resistance to fire damage. And honestly, we probably should have taken that one earlier, but you know, we were focused on increasing our modifiers. And along, you know, on the thought pattern of increasing our modifiers, I think it would be kind of fun to take the Fighting Initiate feat and pick up the Dueling Fighting style, so that when we make an attack with a one-handed weapon, it deals an extra 2 damage on hit. So we're attacking with our Shadow Blade, which is a one-handed weapon, so that brings our damage modifier up to plus 12. So Great Weapon Master Who, that's pretty cool. Let's go into our final level, level 20. We're now at 162 hit points. We get another 7th level spell slot. Now, another 7th level spell slot, that's an extra casting of our highest level Shadow Blade. So that's pretty cool. We also get a feature called Sorceress Restoration, which means every time we take a short rest, we get 4 sorcery points back. That's 2 more turns of quicken spells, so we're happy about that. And yeah, that's level 20. So that brings us to the end of the build. We have 162 hit points, we have an armor class of 18, we can bring that up to 23 with our shield spell. We can attack twice per turn at 8d8 plus 12 per attack, and we can hit an additional target on each attack for 3d8 plus 5. I would say we've achieved our goals. We've created a character who can do high melee damage, who's fairly defensible, and we also have plenty of spell power to boot. So yeah. If you liked what you see and you want to see more character builds like this, go ahead and hit that subscribe button below and like the video for me. I'd really appreciate it. And tune in next Thursday for another original build here at Rules as Written Character Builds.